Interviewer Mr. Stanley Kosierowski on 25 May 2001, Freeport Armory, Freeport, Long Island. Interviewer is Lieutenant Colonel Robert von Hassel. Videographer is Mr. Wayne Clark. Stan, where were you born and when?
My name is Stanley Kosierowski. I was born on April 10th, 1923 in Brooklyn, New York, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, New York.
Tell me a little bit about your family, your mother, your father.
My mother and father came from Poland, roughly around 1915. I attended a parochial Polish school, Our Lady of Consolation, and later was going to Bishop Loughlin High School and started Brooklyn College at the time I was being drafted into the service.
What were you studying at Brooklyn College?
At that time, I was studying engineering. I was going to be building bridges all across South America.
Great idea. What about brothers and sisters?
I had one sister. She was 3 years older than me. We had a small family. And at the age of 19, just 2 months short of my 20th birthday, I was drafted into the service.
Tell us about your experiences in the service. Where did you go first?
I was drafted and went for my basic training to Fort Dix, New Jersey. From there, they sent me to Miami for tests, written tests. And at that time, I thought I would be with all my buddies that were going into the Navy. Unfortunately, by my tests, I was sent into the Army Air Force. I was the only one sent to the Army Air Force. From there, they sent me to Boise, Idaho for gunnery school. And after a period of time of training for armoring and gunnery, I was sent to Fresno, California to form our fighting crew on our B-24. I met the other 9 people from different parts of the country, from California, Texas, Minneapolis. I think I was the only one from New York. And we formed our crew, which at that time was called Crew 16. We finally made a name for the ship, our plane, and we called it Poppin'. After a number of precision bombings, practice bombings, they figured that we were ready for combat, and they sent us east to Florida, south to Brazil, back to North Africa, and then into Foggia, Italy. I was then the tail gunner on a B-24 in the 15th Air Force, 761st Bomb Group, the 74th Power Squadron. We flew many missions over the Adriatic Sea, and on our first mission, which was supposed to be a milk run, 2 of our planes collided and we lost 20 of our men. This was a harrowing experience for our first mission. And on the 5th mission, we were assigned to go to bomb the railroad yards in Budapest, Hungary. Our missions was successful, 100% successful, but as we were turning around to return home, our ship was hit by ack-ack, which blew up a big hole in our wing, causing the plane to be on fire. We dropped out of formation, and my pilot had everything to do with the intercoms to hold the plane into straightening it out from the downward descent. JU-88 follows us up, and when I heard the pilot saying for us to abandon the ship over there, I was climbing out of my turret when a Ju-88 machine gunned and blew up my turret. I was hit up the left arm and was wondering, this is like the movies over here. I'm too young to die, and I was frightened at that time. The pilot fortunately got us into a cloud where we escaped the Ju-88s. By the way, the Ju-88s had, for the first time in the history at that time, rockets to shoot against us. We heard the pilot telling the bombardier to show us the way out. The waist gunner cranked up the ball turret gunner up, who screamed to get out. And we opened up the hatch in the rear of the plane, and I was the first one to jump out. I learned from the manuals to hold on to the ring, so I made sure I held on to that ring. I pulled on the ring 3 times, so I was tumbling, and the third time the chute opened up with such force that my feet buckled up and hit me right in my back. I lost one of my boots on the way down. Coming down, the plane went to the side, and I could see some of the crew bailing out. All personnel got out of the plane safely. Of course, my navigator broke his ankles when he landed. It got very quiet while I was coming down because the plane was going off to the side, and I could see the farmers forming a ring and pointing to me. And I was trying to tell them to get away from there. And I looked around to see where would be my best place to escape, and I saw that the forest was like 2 miles away, and it was impossible for me to go 2 miles. When I landed, I took off the parachute, looked around, and I jumped into a haystack. And naturally, all the farmers formed a nice, perfect circle around me again. In about 15 minutes, a couple of German trucks came around with machine guns and all, ordered me out. And of course, my .45, I couldn't do anything with my .45 against those machine guns. They took me into one of their headquarters, and one of the commanders over there put a small rustic pistol into my temple and asked me a couple of questions about my plane. And of course, I only would tell them my name, rank, and serial number. And I got him a little peed off. They took me into Budapest. They paraded me down the streets, showing their big prize that they captured. The people would spit on me, throw stones at me, and they put me into a trolley car just to show off their big prize who they captured. Finally, they put me into a regular prison that contained murderers, rapists, burglars, and I was put into solitary. There was a window so far up that I couldn't see anything through that window. There was water all over the floor with rats running around. There was a bucket over there for toilet facilities, and they would open up a small door on the bottom and give me some black bread and some watered down soup. At night, some of those prisoners would be yelling and screaming. They were insane. And to keep my sanity, I took one of the spoons and I started scratching on the wall, figuring how much my government owed me in back pay. I was figuring on my salary over there. I was wondering when and if I get out, the government's going to have to owe me this kind of money. Well, they came in, they saw the scratching on the wall, And they asked me, "Is this the way you are treating your new home?" And with that, they hit me with a rifle across the back of my neck and my head over there. I was out like a light. After about 30 days, they put me in a boxcar with several other prisoners, and we had half of the boxcar was with about 30 prisoners. The other half were about 6 Germans with their guns, rifles, and they would throw salt pork and black bread to us like to a dog over there. I remember the little Jewish fellow, when he grabbed the salt pork, he couldn't eat it. I said, "I'm so hungry, I'll take that." And I grabbed it and I ate that piece of salt pork. After a while, we got to Stalag Luft 3, which was about 90 miles southwest of Berlin. I didn't know at that time, but 2 months before my arrival, I found out that the prisoners have dug a hole, a tunnel, into the forest, and about 50 of them escaped. But unfortunately, every one of them, except for one who went to England, they were all captured. As a warning to us, when I arrived, they shot 50 people there. Now, the barracks, we had wooden bunks, double bunks, with slats, hay for mattresses. We had a belly stove to keep us warm. We had a latrine. And outside, they had barbed wires all around the compound with towers, and about every 100 feet with guards with their rifles. And they had a perimeter about 15 feet away from the barbed wires, which they prevented us from going into that area, otherwise we'd be shot. They gave us watered down soup and a piece of black bread once a day. The black bread consisted of 50% rye flour, 20% sawdust, 20% lees, and about 10% sugar beets. And if you're lucky, you would have to pull away some of the pebbles or some of the other things that you'll find like glass in the bread. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I would say the best thing that happened to us as far as our ration was the American Red Cross. They gave us a package which was supposed to last for 30 days. We would have to take it and make a ration and last for 30 days. If we misbehaved, the Germans would keep away those Red Cross packages. And if there was a shortage, we would have to have a package divided between 2 prisoners. This package contained powdered milk, some lemonade, Hershey bars, cigarettes. And what we used to do, if we had some cans, we would open up the cans, and by forming ridges and with a stone, bang on it until we made a big plate out of it. We would get the powdered milk and put in all the sugar or whatever we had in there to make it a high protein sugar content. And with the lemonade, we'd make it curdle. This made a nice firm cake over there, which we were able to cut and divide and have ration for 30 days, besides this watered-down soup that they gave us. I learned how to play chess and bridge. some of the fellas received footballs, and of course, whenever the football would end up in the perimeter, we would have to wave to the guard, is it all right for us to get the ball before we could get there, otherwise we would be shot. One of the fellows over there was able to make a radio. So we had information about what the war was going on. Every night, we would go 2 or 3 into the latrine, and they would tell us how the war was progressing. We never lost hope over there. We always were worrying and figuring how we're going to escape. We always tried. We had plans, and we always tried to escape. Of course, we were called Kriegies, but some of those, what they call ferrets, they had some Czechoslovakian and old Polish people that were sort of traitors. They had them among us to try to ferret any information that we had about escaping and so forth. So we had to be very careful who we talked to. We had formations, roll call formations, twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. One day they called us in for formation in the middle of the day, and we had no idea what was this call, but we came out there, we formed in the formation, and several trucks came in. They opened up the back canvas, and they had machine guns facing us. It was supposed to be that Hitler was almost killed by a bomb, and the order came out that we would be shot by his order. Our German commander, which we called Smiling Jack, refused to carry out that order, and he sent the trucks back out. After the war, we were very lenient towards that commander, and we spoke up for him. This lasted for about 9 months. In January of 1945, we were told to take up whatever small belongings we had, whatever clothes we had. We had no medical supplies at all at this time. A thin blanket, whatever pieces of food that we had, and we were put on a forced march. It seems that the Russians were coming from the east, and the Americans were coming from the west, and they didn't want them to liberate us. So we were put on a forced march. We marched for several weeks in the snow, in the forest. We stopped whatever we time just to get rest and to eat whatever we had. Even the German guards threw away their rifles. They were too heavy for them to carry. We weren't going to go anyplace. So we marched foot after foot until it got to a point where I was completely out of my head, and I didn't care whether they would shoot me or not. I wandered off by myself. I ended up into a small farmhouse, and in the doorway, I just collapsed. I awoke. I had been put into a field hospital, and they were treating my feet for snow frost. All my toes fell off, and it took about a year for the toes to grow back in. They treated my feet for the snow bite, and after a while they threw me in a truck, and they took me to Stanley A, where I joined the rest of my buddies there. We stood there till about April, towards the end of April, the same routine that we had in the other camp. And one day, we woke up in the morning to find all the guards just disappeared. We looked around, and Patton's army was at our front door. We were liberated at that time. They gave us some food. I must have lost about 50 pounds at that time. And we bivouacked pup tents on our way to Belgium. They took us by truck to Belgium. From there, we went to Camp Lucky Strike in France, where they cleaned us, they loused us, and they put us on a livery ship to go back home. We're happy to get back home, where we could get a steak for the first time in months and an ice cream soda. That was heavenly. I was one of the lucky ones to get back. Many of our POWs didn't make it. I was lucky over there on the GI Bill of Rights to go to pharmacy school at Fordham. Later, I bought my own drugstore, which I held for 26 years in Greenpoint section of Brooklyn. We had a nice family drugstore. I was lucky. I got married, had 2 beautiful children, and 3 wonderful, beautiful grandchildren. Like I said, I was one of the lucky ones. On this Memorial Day, or any Memorial Day, we should be thankful to all our veterans, all our POWs, that they put their sacrifices, even their supreme sacrifice of their own lives, to make this the best country in the world. We have the peace and freedom that many countries don't do. I'm thankful for my opportunity to serve the government and be part of this United States.
Thanks, Stan. You ready for my questions now?
Sure thing.
First, let's talk about these 2.
Yes,
How much time we got?
you got,
Hold it up a little. That's good.
it's fine. Okay, zoom in on the photograph.
And let me know when you zoomed out.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. Stan, anything you want to point out in particular?
Yeah, that's when I was young and foolish over there. We all were beautiful people at that time, around the age of 20. The Purple Heart that I received, I was in the 15th Air Force, the conspicuous New York State Medal, European Medal, and the POW Medal. I'm proud of these things over there. I'm glad I did part of my service in helping our country.
You know, that's your 15th.
And the 15th Air Force that I belong to in Foggia, Italy, and B-24.
Now, let's take a look at the other one. These out of the way, too. Okay, hold on.
Okay, why don't you point yourself out of this?
This is me. I was the gunner. I took care of the bomb racks and the machine guns in a turret and a tail. Like over there was from California. He was a waist gunner, and at one trips over there, he claims he had shot one of the planes. He was Frost. He was the nose gunner, and my best buddy, Johnny Reynolds, he was the flight engineer. Our navigator, Smith, who broke his ankles when he landed with the parachute. Our co-pilot, McKinley, our radio operator, Charles Humphreys, Jack Severance, who was our bombardier, and of course, my pilot, K.B. Steele. He was at Pearl Harbor, and he just got on to the age of 27 to learn to become a pilot. He was going to pilot school at that time. After that age, I think he would have been disqualified, so he just got in at the right time. We had a beautiful crew, and we all worked together harmoniously. We helped each other out. Johnny Reynolds over there, in one of those times in North Africa, he used to recite Kipling to me. I used to love to hear about Rudyard Kipling, and it was a great one to recite.
Do you remember any of the Kipling he recited there?
You're a better man than I am, Gunga Din. Anyway, that was part of our B-24 Health Department ship.
All right, why don't we take a short break?
And they had me in a ditch over there at that time. And they brought him along and they started hitting him. And stupid me over there, I jumped in over there. I was going to battle the whole bunch of them. But I says, what are you hitting them for over there? You know?
Well, that must have been a pretty frightening moment.
Well, when you're young over there, you don't take anything over there. I picked up my arm over there. I was going to swing away. I didn't care who it was.
I meant to ask you something about your badges before Stan. You got air crew here,
Yeah.
but you don't have aerial gunner. Did you wear air crew or did you wear
I
gunner's
had
wings?
an area gun. I guess I never received it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I would have thought as a qualified gunner, you would have been wearing the aerial gunnery
I
badge.
did have it, yes.
All right, well, I think we can put these down.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're rolling.
Okay. Stan, I want to go back. I mean, it was a great interview, and I got a lot of good information, but I want to go back and talk about a few things.
Sure.
First, Brooklyn, 1941, okay? You didn't go into service till 43.
Right.
What was Brooklyn like after Pearl Harbor? I mean, how did things change?
Well, let me tell you over there, the people were really up in arms over there about Pearl Harbor. We had unity over there. It was the greatest people over there in unifying against any particular war. We had rationing, we had less gasoline for food rationing, but we all chipped in. Every one of them over there, everybody over there knew that this is the war that we had to sacrifice ourselves to win.
Do you remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
When I was going to Brooklyn College at that time, and in between going to school at night and at daytime I was working in an upholstery place, and between going to work and going at night to school for about a year, I got really fed up about that kind of routine. I had no dates. I was always on the go. When they called me to be in a draft, I applauded. I wanted to get in. I wanted to break off that monotony of just going to school and working. So I was very happy over there. So when the war came in over there, we listened to the radio. We heard Roosevelt over there telling us about the dastardly attack on Pearl Harbor. And like I said, we all joined in.
Do you remember what people were talking about that day and kind of reaction of your other young friends?
Most of the people over there were ready to join to go into the service. They were real peeved over there. For something like this to happen, they wanted to go. They had to go and join the forces.
Let's go ahead just slightly, a couple of weeks after Pearl Harbor. Any changes in Brooklyn in terms of air raid preparations, defense?
Yes, they had wardens going around. They were preparing over there for blackouts. The lights, they would put the curtains on the windows. They were telling us about any kind of preparations in case they have some bombing. There was a lot of preparation.
Did you really feel like that was a threat or just something people...
We didn't know anything at that time over there. So forget, I was just about 20 at that time over there and eager to go. And we didn't know if they're going to come to us over here. If they got into Pearl Harbor, they probably could have got to the West Coast. And who knew about any... There was stories about submarines on Long Island coming up over here. They would put some men across and sabotage some of the things in our Brooklyn Navy Yard. So we're worried about any kind of espionage.
Do you remember seeing any Army anti-aircraft artillery around in Brooklyn?
A lot of trucks over there, lot of trucks over there.
You know, searchlights in Prospect Park or guns over by Union Gas.
Well, they had some soldiers in the key places over there, for guarding over there in case they had some sabotage preventing. That's all I can remember.
Anything about any air raid scares? You remember somebody suddenly saying that the Germans are coming, it's an air raid for
No,
real?
but there's a lot of write-ups in the paper over there about things over there and how to prepare ourselves. And mostly about the rationing and how we should help into the war.
Well, let's skip ahead to Foggia. What was life like at Foggia for you?
Life in Foggia. At that time, the United States Army was beating Rommel in North Africa, and we were going to enter central Italy at that time when I came to Foggia. I wrote to my future brother-in-law that I was going to be stationed in Foggia, and he was just a couple of miles away from me near Rome, and we made a date to meet that Sunday and have a couple of beers together. He wasn't married to my sister at that time, but we made this date, and he showed up at the appointed time Sunday, but I wasn't there. I was already captured by that time. In the middle of the week over there, I was bailing out of my plane. So he always wondered over there why I didn't show up at that appointment there.
Did you ever feel like some kind of stress because one day you'd be flying a combat mission, the next day you're off and you're on a base and you go to movies or just relax? I mean, unlike a combat infantryman, you guys, it was very intense, and then you'd come back and then maybe you might have a day off or something before you flew the next mission. Did that cause you any problems?
Not really. About the only time we really got excited when we had a briefing in the morning. They would wake us up in the morning at, say, about 4 o'clock in the morning, take us by truck to our planes where we had to get briefed. And they told us about our mission, where we're going to go, what kind of people we're supposed to have fighting us, and what their possible type of anti-aircraft they would have against us, what kind of planes they would have against us, and how we were going to fly there and fly back. Of course, we always were worried about getting shot up and worrying how many of us are going to come back alive. It was a scary thing, and we were pretty worried, and we said our prayers also.
And what must you have been thinking? You're sitting in a plane on the ramp, ready to go, and you don't know, am I going to come back? Am I not going to come back? Is today the day my plane gets hit?
That's exactly what we thought over there. But don't forget, when you're 20 and you're foolish, you're really ready to go. You're going to fight the war. You're going to win the war by yourself because you're stupid and foolish. You wouldn't do these things today when you're older. So we were eager. We were worried. We were afraid of what may happen. And we saw people coming back from some of these air raids with their planes shot up, people being taken off the plane, brought into the hospitals, and we always worried what is going to happen to us.
But you were young, so you kind of always figured it might happen to somebody else?
Absolutely, over there. It never happens to you. It's going to happen to the next guy.
So now, let's jump ahead. You're in the tail turret, okay?
Yes.
Your plane's already wounded. There's a Junkers 88 coming right at you in the tail turret.
Yes.
Now what do you think?
At that time over there, when we got hit with the ACAC over there, we fell out of formation. I didn't see any JUAs at that particular time. The first thing I knew over there was when we were told we're on fire, to prepare to bail out. My parachute was behind the turret, and I opened up the turret to get out of the turret and put my chute on. The JUA came out of nowhere, and he blew up my turret. Shot me up my left arm over there. Like I said in the interview over there, I was lucky I wasn't standing straight, otherwise I would have had his right straight in the guts. But I was getting out, and as I got out to put the parachute on, fear really came into me. You know how thick the fuselage is, about 1/4 of an inch, and I put my back up against the fuselage, and I said, my God, I'm too young to die. I can't believe this is happening to me. This must be like in the movies. But it wasn't the movies. This was what really was happening. And I was frightened. And when we opened up the hatch in the back over there, and we saw the Russian ground, and I had no experience about bailing out, they were supposed to teach us, and they never did over there. They told us verbally what we should do. We should always jump out head first so you could roll out instead of just jumping with your feet, otherwise you get caught by the plane. So that's what I remembered. So I came rolling out with my head down, holding on to that ring for dear old life, and I rolled out over there. It was a scary situation because you don't know what's going to be once you're out of the plane. You don't know if the parachute is going to open. You don't know who you're going to meet over there. All you know is that you're over enemy territory. You're away from home. You're over there by yourself.
Let's skip ahead again. After the war, you used the GI Bill.
Yes.
Do you think that made a difference in your life?
Made the world of difference over there. When I was a POW, my family didn't know whatever happened to me. All they got an answer to my family that I was missing in action. Not until about 6 months later did the Red Cross tell my family that I was a POW. So for 6 months they had no idea if I was living or dead. At that time, the Germans let us write back home. Of course, everything was censored. We opened up the letters, and anything that they didn't like, they would cross out. And I had plenty of time to think over as a POW, what am I going to do if and when I get out of this mess? And I wrote to my sister to find out about different schools of pharmacy. I was going to be a druggist. I made up my mind at that time over there, when I get out, and I had all the hopes in the world to get out, that I'm going to be a pharmacist and have my own drugstore. And she wrote to me over there. And she wrote, there are places like in Philadelphia, School of Pharmacy, in Fordham. And when I got back home, I had enough of barracks life, dormitories, and I didn't want any of that. So I was close to Fordham. I figured instead of dormitories, the best thing in the world is to go to Fordham. And it was a good school. I went through 3.5 years of school. I went through one summer, and I graduated in 1949, 1950. Got my license. The first one was in Virginia for reciprocity before I even got my New York State license. I worked for a pharmacist as a junior, which later on I bought him out. I was the boss there. We had 3 drugstores at one time. And after 26 years in a local pharmacy where everybody knew everyone, I saw the kids growing up from being small kids to getting married to having their own kids. And they came to me as their grandpa in the pharmacy. We had a beautiful family arrangement. And I filled their prescriptions, and I was their pharmacist. They came to me with all their problems. I tried to help them whatever I could. It was a real nice arrangement until the area turned very bad at that time. I was held up 3 times. One of the times I was held up with The guy had handcuffs on me, had me handcuffed to the refrigerator in the back door. Had him in court. They gave him a slap on the hands. And there's another time where this guy came after me with a knife at nighttime. I ran after him, grabbed him by the coat, and he had cartons of cigarettes stuffed up in his overcoat. He could have stabbed me at that time. And I had about enough of 3 holdups, and the whole area was changing. It was time for me to get out.
Do you think you would have been able to become a pharmacist if you hadn't had the GI Bill?
No way. It wasn't for the GI Bill of Rights. I would never been anything. When I was gone, before I was drafted, I was a cushion man. I was working in the upholstery place. I was learning.
Okay, tape 2, interview with Mr. Stanley Kosierowski on 25 May 2001, Freeport Armory. Okay, Stan, we talked about the GI Bill, and it made a difference in your life, and I guess it made a difference in the life of your children then, too.
Well, like I said over there, if it wasn't for the GI Bill of Rights, I probably would have gone back to be in the upholstery business. Never would have realized my dream of being a pharmacist over there. But of course, I got the help from the GI Bill of Rights, and not only for the schooling, but they also helped me get my home in East Meadow. For about $5,000, I was able to put a down payment on my house, and with the GI Bill of Rights over there and the mortgage and things, I would never had a home over there or be able to have a wife and kids in the future. So I have a lot to be thankful for the GI Bill of Rights. They helped me get my own store, raise my family, and I was able to save money and put my kids through college themselves. And now my grandchildren are going to college. So it all helped out. And I have to say, the only best thing that helped me was the GI Bill of Rights.
Now, besides the GI Bill of Rights, when you look back, how else did your experiences during the war change your life? I mean, can you look and see that you do things differently now after the war because of what you experienced?
It made a man out of me. I came in, although I was just a green boy. I was 19, didn't see anything besides Brooklyn. The closest place I went to was Coney Island or Canarsie. I saw the whole world. They took me over to different places. They opened up my eyes to how different people lived. It was a world of information. It's a world of experiences and running the people.
Did it change the way you thought about life or the way you carried out your life?
I knew I had to make something out of myself. I lost 3 years in the service, and now it was time for me to make a living, raise a family, and I was very serious over there from what I've learned to be on my own and start raising a family.
Well, let me ask you another question. All right, you talked about the first time you were held up, somebody put handcuffs on you. Second time you were held up, you're chasing a guy around with a knife. Do you think you would have chased around the guy with the knife if you hadn't have been a POW and been shot down and said, I ain't gonna ever let anybody...
No. They showed that I was pretty aggressive. I was still in my 20s. Nobody's going to pull anything on me like that. No, the Army showed me that I was a man. I was no green kid. Nobody's going to pull anything on me. If they tried anything, I would certainly fight.
Anything in particular stands out after all the years looking back? I mean, when you think of World War II, what stands out the most in your mind?
We have, at the VA, a few ex-American POWs who are taking the post-traumatic courses. Some of them have a trauma that doesn't escape them. They had go through that every single day. We think about the experience that we went through the war and how lucky we were to get out of it. There many people, many of our soldiers, our men, got into it and they were wounded, came back without their arms or legs, or even gave up their lives so that we could have a freedom and best country in the world, peaceful country. Well, I'm thankful over there for all the things that I went through. It taught me how to live, how to go along with my other fellow man.
Did you ever think that since you survived and others didn't, maybe you had to kind of do something different or more or special?
No, I do say my prayers. And I light a couple of candles in church every once in a while and wonder how come I was lucky while others weren't. Some of the people over there in the POWs have a real problem wondering about that same question. How come their buddies got it and they got away? Some of them have real post-traumatic stress syndromes. I have some of it, but I'm not as bad as some of those people over there.
Sometimes memories come up.
Memories always come up, and you reflect on the times and the stressful times. Things come up, pop up to remind you. They're always there. Every place you go, they're always there to remind you.
Let me ask you another question. Do you think Americans, particularly young Americans today, do they really appreciate what happened during World War II?
Let me tell you a story. I was at Republican Airport one time when they had the B-17 and B-24s at Republic. And I was staying with my wife over there by the gate over there, and I actually wanted to fly in that B-24, which I haven't done so many years. And I was telling my wife over there all the different parts of the B-24. And alongside of me was a young couple with their small child. And after listening to me tell my wife about the B-24 and my experience, he came over to me, tapped me on the shoulder, and says, "I want to thank you." Now, this is a young guy, didn't know me from Adam, didn't know anything. He was too young to know anything about the World War II, but he knew from history over there what happened. I was on a cruise. I wore a World War II cap. I was in an elevator. A guy would pat me on the shoulder and say, "Thank you." And I said, "For what?" "For being there and helping us out at that time." People do remember. We were on Fifth Avenue on our 50th anniversary. The lines was on both sides of the streets were lined with people cheering us over there. We had people coming up to our vans, and they were so happy to greet us over there and thank us for all that we did. We would appreciate if everybody would do that for all the veterans.
Well, I'm going to give you the last word here, Stan. Is there anything that you would like to talk about your generation, your war, for people maybe 50 or 60, another 60 years, or another 100 years from now should know about that we haven't touched on?
Well, when Brokaw wrote this Best Generation, I believe every word that he wrote is true. We had some generation. We had a people that stood in unity over there. I don't think there's any place at any time that we had so much unity as we did in World War II. We had a real cause to fight for. This was a cause, a religious cause, something that we put our teeth into.
Mm-hmm.
We all stood together. We sacrificed over there. We had rations over there. We did everything over there to make sure that we would win. Americans in general are a fighting group. I don't know. They seem to be fighting every 25 years or so. But our group, I think is one of the best groups that ever came out. And I hope we show the younger generation what we went through so that they could have a better life that we gave for them.
Thanks.
You're welcome.